Ted, on a Facebook page post recently, you called this move, and I'm going to quote here, a pseudo-election, one that desecrates the universal values cherished by the people of Hong Kong. How so? Expand on that for us.
The answer is obvious because in the past, the local council elections was almost truly democratically elected by the people, even though the parliament is not a democracy. But at the local level, people could freely choose their representatives. That has been the tradition for Hong Kong for decades since the handover, and we inherited the British local council systems, and we've been enjoying that freedoms that people can speak freely in the council. But then Beijing has become so impatient after the 2019 freedom movement, the People's Uprising. So Beijing has decided that this time, even the local council elections has to be killed. So essentially, Beijing is departing from the more Western tradition, Westminster style of governing, even at local level. So essentially, Beijing doesn't want any elements of democracy and freedom anymore, even at the local level.
I
So
wonder,
it doesn't want.
though, why Beijing would want to do that, given that many pro-democracy activists like yourself, many former legislators like yourself, have actually left Hong Kong.
I believe that Beijing just doesn't like freedom, democracy, doesn't like dissent. It wants to make sure that it's a system without opposition at all. So it's pushing itself and pushing Hong Kong towards a more extreme authoritarian governance, and it believes that that's the guarantee of its staying in power. So because it has seen how Hong Kong people can rise in 2019, and it doesn't want that to happen anymore.
Now, Beijing has already changed the electoral laws to boost the number of pro-Beijing lawmakers on local councils. Now the candidates will also be vetted by the Chinese government. So why even have local elections, given they're already controlling so much of it? Why go through the show of elections?
Yeah. That's actually a good question, because the Hong Kong regimes and Beijing still want Hong Kong to look democratic and to be more civilized. And so it wants to keep the form of democracy while it's not. So it wants to keep that some degree of elections that people can vote, but essentially more seats are appointed by the government, and even every lawmaker is appointed by the government. Very ridiculous. So it wants to keep the form without giving you the substance of freedom and democracy in Hong Kong. Not at all.
Ted, you are currently living in self-imposed exile here in Australia. You have been sentenced in absentia for 3.5 years in prison for contempt of court. Now, the authorities want you back in Hong Kong to face these charges. And they say, and I'm going to quote here from their statement, if he, and that is referring to you, remains obstinate, he will ultimately become a lifelong fugitive. Don't think he can live by hanging on to the coattails of a foreign master. Do you think you'll ever return to Hong Kong?
No, I don't think so. I would be arrested and be sent to jail directly at the border. I'm absolutely sure. So I have like 19 counts of criminal charges against me and some 4 arrest warrants against me. So that I'm a political figure of Hong Kongers speaking up for Hong Kong's freedom and democracy. So absolutely, I cannot go back to Hong Kong. Very sadly and heavily saying this, but I cannot.
There are quite a number of people like yourself from Hong Kong, pro-democracy activists, who've left Hong Kong out of fear for their lives, out of fear for recriminations as well. Amongst this cohort, is there a sense of hope for the future of Hong Kong, or gloom?
Yeah, you're right. There are so many of us who left. I would call it an exodus. So not only activists, politicians, and ordinary Hong Kongers left Hong Kong because they can't stand anymore. It's sad that we don't see any chances of changes in the near future. But in the long term, I think the regime is burning itself by killing all of us, killing democracy, killing freedoms, turning Hong Kong into an extreme authoritarianism. I believe the regime will die down itself one day. That's the belief of many Hong Kongers. So we only have to be patient. We have to wait for the opportunity for the people to rise again. And I do hope that international communities, our allies, Australians, can see this point and to support us remotely, internationally, speak up for us. And that's the hope.